Hey YouTube, it's me, and as I promised on my Instagram, this is a review of the movie Joker. Truthfully, I have recorded this a few times already, but I just really wanted to get it right, so hopefully this is the final, third time's the charm, I think. So I had the opportunity to see Joker on Saturday night, and I walked out of the theater just feeling heavy and moved and sad and just a lot of emotions, which to me is a sign of a really good movie. And Joaquin Phoenix, this version of the Joker was a perfect role for Joaquin Phoenix. He brought so much depth to this character. If you haven't seen the movie yet, I don't really think that anything that I have to say is going to give away anything you didn't know. I mean, there's no real plot twist. The plot twist is that Arthur Fleck becomes Joker. There are a few little secrets, I guess, in the movie. The movie does nicely tie in to Batman, even though it's not a main focus of the movie. Maybe there's only a couple minutes that are sort of related to that. But if you haven't seen the movie yet, it's up to you. I don't really think I'm going to give anything away, but either way, I think you should go see it. And let me know your thoughts on it. So the movie was so powerful to me because it, in my opinion, and at least you could have watched this movie and walked away with something completely different. In my opinion, the movie was about mental health and these different aspects of mental health that made Arthur Fleck the person that he became, which was Joker, ultimately. A few themes that really stood out in the movie to me were, number one, generational trauma. And I'm going to talk about all of these issues in a lot more detail with references to specific scenes later on in the video. So maybe you can watch this and then stop the video if you don't want to know details about the scenes. But number one, generational trauma. Number two, the lack of, I'd say, government and institutional focus on healthcare. And number three, how we treat other people, especially those that we are perceived as different from us in society. And I think just number four, you can just say the basic human need for love and acceptance. Which, again, I think this is the movie that we need right now in our, considering sort of the mental health crisis that I feel like is going on in the country. And sort of the total lack of focus on mental health in this country. And I'll say a fifth point that, at the end of the day, we all have choices. We can't blame, bad choices that we make on a bad day. We all have the obligation to do the best we can to seek care and to seek help. That is our responsibility, first and foremost. And we obviously have our second responsibility is to not harm other people. So even though this movie made me feel very deeply for Arthur Fleck, at the end of the day, obviously, I don't condone violence and believe that we all have a choice in the way we conduct our lives. But with that being said, it just really makes me wonder, what if you take away one of these aspects or these problems in Arthur's life? Maybe he would have turned out differently. So I'm a nerd, so I'll make a comparison to the fire triangle. To make fire, you need one of three things in the triangle. You need heat, you need fuel, and you need oxygen to make a fire. If you take away one of those aspects of the fire triangle, you don't have fire. So even though Arthur Fleck was mentally ill, he had been ostracized by society, the system had given up on him, or basically had failed him, I guess you can say. He experienced basically a lot of trauma as a child. Maybe if you took away one or two of those factors, maybe things would have turned out differently for Arthur Fleck, and of course, sadly, the victims of the Joker down the road. Man, this is a fictional movie. It's weird. I'm talking about him like he's a real person, but this is a fictional movie, obviously. But this is just I got really into this movie just for this because he felt so human and it felt so relatable in so many ways. So with that, I guess I'll dive in a little bit more into the scenes that really stood out to me in the movie. So one of the first scenes in the movie, Arthur is trying to entertain this little kid on the bus. and he's doing this thing where he's like, oh, peekaboo, you know, trying to make the kid laugh, and the kid's like cracking up, and Arthur loves it because Arthur, even though bless his heart, he's not funny, he's not very funny, he loves to make people laugh. Like he feels like it's his calling in his life. Most because like his mom, that's what his mom told him, and he just sort of internalized that. But he enjoys it. There's a scene later in the movie where he gets fired from his job, which his job is as a clown, and he's just really upset because he said, I love this. Like he uses this very strong like language, like I love this job, but he loses it. Anyways, he loves making people laugh. He's making this kid laugh on the bus. His mom turns around and is like, stop bothering my kid. And Arthur's like, I'm not, you know, I'm just trying to make him laugh. And then he starts busting out in this fit of hysterical laughter, which is super, it's just awkward, and you can tell his like by his body language, and he's trying to make it stop, and he's embarrassed, and he pulls out this card. He has a laminated card, and he hands to the mom, and it says, basically, I have a condition. This condition can result due to trauma, where I laugh uncontrollably and I can't help it. And so, man, like this poor guy, like you already feel bad for him, and then he's just taking on so much shame from this condition that he can't help. This lady and like no one around him is clearly understanding of what's going on. Like there's several times this happens in the movie, and people are like, "What's wrong with you?" And he tries to explain, and like no one really cares. It's very evident this is like a really sad and lonely life for Arthur. One of the next scenes that we see is he goes to see his therapist. So clearly he does have some mental health care. You find out that he's on medication. He tells the therapist that he didn't think his medication was working. He thought he needed to try something different. She kind of brushes that off. She asks to read his journal that he is supposed to be keeping. She reads specifically a line in the journal that says, my life will make more sense when I'm dead, or something like that. He tells her that like he thinks that he's better off locked up. So like clearly here, like we have like a suicide, like he's threat to himself, like he openly voices that he thinks he'd be better off in an asylum. And the therapist just completely acts like she cannot be bothered with him, like this, like he's just annoying her or something. And so we find out later that this is some sort of government sponsored mental health program that he's involved in. So obviously this counseling is not working well for him. So between the first counseling session that we see in the second, he actually kills people. It's a really tough scene to watch, but he kills people. So yeah, anyways, I could say a lot about that, but I'll just skip over that. So we see him go see his therapist again for the second time. And it seems like maybe like now that he's like, this is probably the first time in his life that he's fought back against people that have bullied him. And so you sort of see like him starting to like come out of his shell a little bit and to like show some signs of like some fight in him, or like even happiness. It's kind of, I mean, we're talking about because he just killed some people, so it's obviously not quite well placed, but you know, he kind of pushes back on his therapist in this session. He says to her, I come here every week and you ask me, how's your job? How's your life? Are you having any negative thoughts? And he said, I have nothing but negative thoughts. And I thought that was yet again, a very relatable scene. I'll say for me personally, like that really hit home because I've gone days, weeks, months, maybe even there's a span in my life where it was like a year that went by where like I just could not turn off the negative voice in my head. And so like this is it's real for me. It's real for a lot of people I know. It's just a very relatable scene where you can like really empathize a lot with the character. And so in that same scene, the therapist ends up telling Arthur like, hey, our funding has been cut. I can't see you anymore. And he also finds out that he can't take his medication anymore. So this is sort of the example of where the government has failed Arthur. Like the system has failed Arthur. There shouldn't be anything more important in the healthcare system than mental health. I feel like if your mental health is taken care of, like there's so many other aspects in your life that could that would flourish as a result. So like mental health care is healthcare, and it is the most important health care. But in our country, in our society, we do not place enough emphasis on this fact. And it's something that I've become really passionate about over the past year or so. Something I've always been passionate about, but I guess even more so because of my own personal journey in the past year or so. So like this to me was just like, okay, this is a reflection of our real society, of real life. Later on, you see Arthur writing in his journal, and the camera pans down, and you can see that he's written, "I'm not okay, but they expect me to be." Which again was it was simple, but it was profound. Again, we're all told to put on a happy face, to be happy, to like, oh, smile. God, I feel like that happens to like women more often. Hey, why don't you smile? Like sometimes we don't want to smile. Sometimes we don't want to get out of bed. Sometimes it's hard to like even like focus on like a simple task. There's like basically being okay is not reality for so many of us. I think everybody I know, I don't want to say everybody because I don't know everybody in the world, but everybody I know, we have good days and bad days, and we have struggles, and if everyone's walking around putting on a happy face, then that is not normal or natural, and we need to stop acting like it is. So later on in the movie, you find out, basically Arthur does some digging because someone has told him something about his mom that he just can't believe, so he's going to find out for himself. When you first meet Arthur's mom, or at least to me, she kind of seems like maybe she's feeble, and like maybe she's up there in age, and maybe she's forgetful, or just like, just things that happen when you get older, I guess you can say. I didn't really think much of it. But then someone tells Arthur that his mom is crazy and that she's delusional and that she has spent time in a mental health institution, and he just can't believe it. Not his precious mom. So then he goes and like gets her file, and not only does he find out that yes, like his mother has been in a mental institution, she probably landed there because she abused him. Oops, sorry, another podcast. I just hit play on my computer. So she probably landed there because she abused him. So this is news for Arthur. Not only did her abuse likely lead to his current mental condition to where he has this uncontrollable laughter. It makes me wonder because it mentions in the report that he was also like malnourished and left to starve. I didn't really understand why they wanted Joaquin Phoenix to lose so much like weight and to look so like malnourished and skinny for the movie, but I think maybe this is why, because he was malnourished and underfed as a kid, and maybe he never recovered from that physically. So this to me was probably the biggest thing that hit home for the movie. One of the biggest things. First of all, like mental illness is inheritable. It's in your genes. It can get passed down. So that's just that's just a fact. So it's like, okay, well, he obviously got it through his genes, at least some of it. The second part of that is basically when children are abused or neglected, not Arthur's case is pretty straightforward. He was neglected, he was beaten, he was tied to like a radiator and left for a long period of time. That's a pretty straightforward example of abuse. But even like less straightforward examples of abuse, like neglect or lack of love and attention and affection, any type of neglect or child abuse like that basically rewires your brain at such a young early age whenever your brain is developing. So basically what I'm saying is that Arthur was rewired and he was programmed to be to have problems from a very early age due to his mother. The genetic part you obviously can't help, but like the nurturing part you can. And so that was big. That was huge. Again, that's something I've been very interested in over the past couple of years myself. So along those same lines, Arthur has grown up without his father, and he doesn't know who his father is. And it's very clear that he wants that love and affection and affirmation from a father figure. And I say that for two reasons. First of all, he's having this fantasy where he meets this talk show host that he really likes. And the talk show host has him come down on the stage. The talk show host hugs Arthur, and he says, wow, I would give up the fame and the fortune and all of this just to have a son like you. And Arthur's like, like, so this is like a fantasy in his head of like, clearly like he's missing like this like love and affection and father figure in his life. So later on in the movie, like he thinks he finds out who his father is. He confronts the man, and the man was like mean to him, like rude. He was like, you're not my son. And Arthur's response was, what's wrong with can't you just give me a little warmth? You know, it's like, that was huge. It's like, man, like isn't that what we all want? Like we just want love from those around us. And this man, like in Arthur's very vulnerable moment, couldn't even like be empathetic and calm and patient with him. He was just mean and cruel to him. And so that just made me feel really sad for Arthur. And, you know, for the people out there who are missing that affection and warmth in their life, whether it be from parents or people close to you or whatnot. So I guess the final thing I'd like to point out in the movie was the very last scene, where everything kind of, as you can say, the shit hits the fan. Arthur, before the shit hits the fan, Arthur sort of makes, to me, like, the grandest statement of them all in the whole movie. And it sort of summarizes the whole movie. He says, this is what you get when you cross a mentally ill loner with a society that doesn't give a fuck about him. Yeah, that's it. Of course, again, Arthur's blaming his actions on external factors. Which is, you know, I think he's right there, but again, it's not an excuse for what follows, obviously. But, yeah, I think that movie left me with a lot to think about, and I hope that you go see it, and if you don't see it, I hope that maybe this video gives you a lot to think about. I know, I always try my best to be nice to people and, you know, not shun people, and I'm just gonna make an extra conscious effort now, like, going forward in my life, to be cognizant of the way that like I interact with other people, especially someone who clearly might be different for me. So there you go. There's my review of Joker. Let me know what you think of the movie or the review. Maybe you've seen it and you have a different opinion, but anyways, have a good day.